Hello, my name is Robert Payton, and I am on a mission to stop the 7-year tribulation lie, the coming 7-year tribulation, which is a lie. It's been taught in our churches. I've been inundated with it half of my life, and when I finally decided to study on my own, you find out there's a whole nother interpretation of the end times that does not include a coming 7-year tribulation. It does not include a coming Antichrist person, not the spirit of the Antichrist that every evil person on this planet has. It's against Christ. It's for Lucifer. And the global nuclear holocaust. Okay, it's all explained totally different. I've written 2 books on the subject. The first is Revelations of Grace and Mercy, the truest interpretation of the book of Revelation. You can find it for free on smashwords.com. That's smashwords.com. And I've just finished a second book within a year or so ago. It is The Book of Revelation is So Simple. Again, at smashwords.com. The first book is more of a study guide on how to deprogram what you've been taught. That doesn't make any sense because it never made any sense to me. Every time they taught this stuff and I would go in the Bible, I would find stuff that would conflict with it. And but the second book is more of a rant. It's a straightforward slap in the face of, hey, this is what is more than likely really going to happen, not what they say is going to happen. I don't know where this 7-year tribulation come from people. I see where it comes from in the Bible, by taking pieces of Daniel and pieces of Revelation and you mix and stick it in a blender and out pops the 7-year tribulation. It's just nonsense. It's nonsense. In Isaiah chapter 34 verse 8, Isaiah chapter 61 verse 2, Isaiah chapter 63 verse 4, it clearly states, God clearly tells us regarding his return that it will only be one day of vengeance on his enemies. Turns out to be on his enemies. One day of vengeance for his enemies in a year of restoration for Jerusalem. Who are these pastors out here that are turning the grace and mercy and love of God, the Father who created this beautiful planet, every living creature on it, little children, just everything? Who are these people that are turning God into a tyrant, into a dictator, into this horrible being? The last I checked, that was Lucifer. That was Satan. But these people have an agenda to twist your mind and get you away from God. That's their agenda. Hal Lindsey wrote that book, Late Great Planet Earth, and then he wrote books following it that talked about a coming 7-year tribulation. It's just not true. And the other preachers picked it up too. John Hagee, San Antonio, he picked it up. They both agree on almost everything. I've read both their books. But I knew something was wrong there. It doesn't have the Spirit of God in a coming 7-year tribulation. You got to put yourself in God's shoes. If you're a good person, if you're a loving person, if you love life, if you love all the beautiful creation that God created for us, you've got to stop and take a breath and go, would I do that? Would I hurt all these people? Would I do such a thing? Would I allow, this is your children, would you allow known child molesters, known evil people, these child traffickers, sexual predators, would you give them, your children to them for 7 years? No. No. But these evil people out there that are those type of people want you to believe that. They want you to know that God is, evil and turn you away from him. That's what they want. So that's my rant. Now let's get to the facts. Again, Isaiah 61 verse 2, Isaiah 63 verse 4, Isaiah 34 verse 8. It is your primary format. When I prophet, I don't like calling them prophets because they are sons of daughters of God. The prophets went out when Christ died on the cross. He put an end to the prophets. We are now sons and daughters of God. We are prophets, in a sense. We are more than prophets. The prophets of the Old Testament longed for the day to have what is available to us that God freely gives to us when we accept Him. We are so much more than what they had in the Old Testament. So, but a prophet, still call him a prophet, but I just want to clarify that, told me to read Isaiah. This was many years ago. And of course, I'm like, yeah, whatever. And when I started my study on the book and I was confused, I was reading Revelation over and over, I was like, I got to go backwards. So I went and I was like, well, I was told to read Isaiah. Let me read Isaiah. So I read Isaiah through. And then I read it a second time. And then I read a third time. And your conscious, your subconscious, your brain, your spirit has got to absorb over and over the books, and your brain, it's like you automatically start piecing things together. And I remember, I read Isaiah chapter 60 through 66 because those are talking about, you want to know what's going to happen when Christ returns. That's the main primary book you go to. Book of Revelation is confusing, and I'll explain to you why. Because it's a bunch of short visions that are all like piled up, like you take little information discs and you just throw them on the table. You've got to organize them yourself and put them in order yourself, all the events and when they occur, what time they occur, etc. You don't go from the first chapter to the last chapter. It's not in order like that. They go in order. They're in order in the chapters, but they're not in order from the Revelation chapter 1 through 22. You've got to assemble it yourself. But going back to Isaiah, I read Isaiah, and the 61 verse 2 and 63 verse 4 were sticking out, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was thinking, I know I read it somewhere else, and then of course I went back to chapter 34, which is again talking about when Christ returns, and everything from about around 34 up. But God jumps around. Yeah, that's why people find it so confusing. Is God, tells us, this is what's going to happen. And because my people Isaiah did this is going to happen to them. And that he'll go back to what happened in 70 AD. But it was future prophecy back then. He said it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It did happen. Okay, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, the people being scattered, the falling away, the apostasy that the prophets talked about in the book of Acts and all. The apostates, or not Acts, but forward, but anyway, the apostasy, I think it was Corinthians, that means the falling away. It was the falling away of God's people from Him after His Son came. After He gave His own Son to give His life for them, they still turned away, and that was an apostasy, and that's the apostasy. Apostasy is not a coming rapture. It has nothing to do with a plucking away, as they say. It's a falling away, not a plucking up. It's a falling away. That's the definition. And the apostasy did take place right before the destruction of 70 AD. After Jesus came, before the destruction of the Jerusalem in 70 AD, 66 through 70 AD, which lines up with about 3.5 years, which is where they get the 3.5 years from, and some in Daniel and some in Revelation and and then they add it all up and make that 7-year tribulation, which is not true. And nowhere in scriptures does it say, God says, when I return, there's going to be 7 years of tribulation. Never, nowhere. You cannot find that verse anywhere. Not that sentence anywhere. But He does say, one day of vengeance, a year of restoration, and that's your foundation. That's your foundation you begin with, and you start building upon that. You can actually, you have to find out what the day of vengeance is. So you go to Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51. Read up, let it soak in, and basically you're going to find that the Medes, God's going to allow the Medes to launch their arrows on the people of Kasdim and destroy them in that one day. That's His vengeance. He said it's going to be my day of vengeance again. And you match that up with Isaiah. Okay, yeah, that's the day of vengeance He's talking about. It's going to be one day where He allows the Medes to launch their arrows on the people of Kasdim. Well, the people of Kasdim destroyed God's first temple. There's retribution there. And they're going to pay. And today they are Saudi Arabia. And the Medes, of course, is Iran. And they're going to launch these arrows and burn up 1/3 of the Middle East desert land with arrows. Okay, what kind of arrows? Well, Iran has these big, massive arrows that can destroy at least 1/3 of the Middle East. And they are nuclear missiles. And that would be allowed to occur. When Christ comes down, he himself, after things get started and the resurrection, and I'll call it the third resurrection because it is the third resurrection, takes place, and we are taken up. We'll get to that in another teaching. Christ himself comes down and has a day of fury. It's his day of vengeance. And while he allows the Medes to destroy the people of Kasdim, he comes down and defends Jerusalem and fights and just makes it circle around Jerusalem, around the surrounding nations, going through the nations, and taking out his vengeance on those people. Now, this is in part with the resurrection. You got to understand, third resurrection takes place. We won't get into that. I'll have to get into that later, because this is a compiling teaching that's totally different than what you've ever been taught. If you haven't been taught, if you haven't learned anything about Revelation, you just kind of heard it, and you're going to study, you're in excellent shape to learn this a lot easier. It took me a long time to unlearn what I had learned. I was expecting this to happen and that to happen, and I was wrong and wrong and wrong again. And what God was showing me was this is the truth over here, which everyone says. Everyone says theirs is the truth. But I put 7 years of studying, and I don't mean just through a year and a half of that was laying on my stomach because my back was out, and the only comfortable place was on my stomach, and I was on the floor for the most part of the day and some in the evening of doing nothing but working on this, going through Strong's Concordance and looking up mistranslated words, and which is another strong point. There are quite a few mistranslated words, primarily in the book of Revelation, and it is primarily on one word that can change the meaning of the whole sentence. And one small example is, now, the book of Revelation unlocks the book of Daniel. It unlocked the book of Daniel when it was written 2,000 years ago. Okay? So there's no mysteries in the book of Daniel. In fact, I avoided the book of Daniel when I was creating my first book. And I thought, well, okay, I'm just going to publish it like this and da-da-da. All this stuff happened with my publisher. They were scamming people. They were going out of business. I was lucky to get my money back because I had put it on my credit card. But it gave me a little more time, and I had sat down when my sons were in a class, an after-school class, and just decided to read the book of Daniel because, who understands totally the book of Daniel? And as I read it through, after my knowledge of understanding the book of Revelation, I was like, oh my gosh, And God told Daniel, the angel of God, whatever, told Daniel, don't concern yourself with the times of the end. He said, just, you're going to rest. He showed him a little bit, but that was it. And it's true because the book of Daniel is mostly about what happened in the Middle East, in the past. The last thing that's in there that has anything to do with our future, almost every bit of it's in our past, is the prophecy about the horrible beast, which is here today. It's a religion. The beast is a religion. The beast is always Satan's religion, whether it be the red dragon that God destroyed 2,000 years ago, whether it be the beast that comes out of the sea, which is here today, which is a religion in the Middle East. It's Satan's religion in the Middle East. And then you have the beast that comes up out of the earth, which happens after Christ comes, locks him up in the abyss, locks him in the earth, Satan, and his religion, and everything he stands for is locked up in the abyss. 1,000 years later, he's released. That's the beast coming up out of the earth, or out of the abyss, as we were taught. And it's just a religion. It's Satan's religion. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal if you're living in the Middle East and you're a Christian. It has been a big deal if you're in the Middle East and you're a Christian. Christians have been slaughtered throughout the ages in the Middle East. And it's all from Satan's religion. You're all like, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm holy. You want to be holy? Go to the Middle East and tell them you're a Christian. They're going to butcher you up. Someplace they'll respect you, but then somebody's going to get a hold of you, and that's going to be the end. Anyway, so let's move forward. I'm not going to talk about the resurrections right now. I have other videos. If you look at my other videos, the third resurrection, the rapture truth, the third resurrection is the best video that explains all the resurrections that I have. We'll get into that later. But the 7-year tribulation, like I said, it's not true. They've taken parts of Daniel, parts of Revelation, they put it together. They took Revelation chapter 7. The angel says, "Who are these people?" to John, and John says, "Oh, and the angel tells him that these are the people that have come out of the great tribulation, or the great persecution. Now, everybody's been through tribulation. Everybody's been through some type of persecution. There are millions of children out there that have been going through hell. There are millions. Ask the people, ask the Africans who are, sold to slavery. Right? Ask the Jewish people when Hitler was just slaughtering them, putting them in gas chambers, just murdering them, just firing squad. Ask someone who's lost a child or someone they really, really loved. They go through hell. And you do think they are going to care? I mean, when you go through so much hell, you don't care for one more little piece of... Who cares about a guy coming to rule for 7 years? Okay? When you're in full-fledged hell on earth. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about. Some of you don't. Oh well. Hopefully nothing will ever happen, and you can live your life. That's another thing I always say. They say, people talking about how, we're the generation, all this horrible stuff's coming. Why this generation? What about my father's generation, my grandfather's generation? Why does God select us, this generation, to go through hell? So I couldn't understand that. You get the rest of the people having a wonderful life. They work 9 to 5. They had a hard job. They worked 2 jobs or whatever. But dang, they ain't gonna have to look forward to this 7 years of hell. Why us? Well, it's just another thing. It's not true. Okay, and we each have our own tribulations. We all have our own problems. So don't believe that. And from my own studies, Christ is not coming like tomorrow. Okay, we got a little while longer. We got, I probably won't see the return of Christ. When you look at the evidence that I will present on another episode. But the 7-year tribulation is just full of horrible stuff. They say it's the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 bowls, plagues, and blah, 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 blah. Well, slow down. Let's look at the 7 seals. And this goes in depth even further. The 7 seals were opened 2,000 years ago. From the time sin entered the garden, sometime after that, God wrote down everything that was going to happen in a scroll. Rolled it up, had it sealed. 7 seals. Blam. And in Revelation 5 verse 1, we find that scroll in God's hand with writing on both sides, the inside and the outside. So you roll up a newspaper, okay? Roll up a newspaper, chew you some seven packs of bubble gum and stick, seal it up with 7 seals, bubble gum seals. What do you see? What do you see? You see writing on the outside of that newspaper. Well, the scroll was the same way. There was writing on the outside of that scroll. Okay? So you envision that scroll. So no one's worthy. Revelation chapter 5, no one was worthy to open it. No one could be found in heaven, in earth, under the earth, nowhere, except for one. When he died on that cross. When he died on that cross, He became more than just the Son of Man, or the Son of God. He became more. And everybody says, oh, he's always had the power. No, it was limited. He didn't have power over certain things on the earth because it was given to man. God gave it to man, the authority to man. Christ had to come to be a man to gain access to the authority on the earth. And he exercised it while he was here. The same exercise any of them disciples could have had. And they were given stuff. They could, call lightning down from heaven. Okay? So Christ won all authority, heaven, earth, under the earth, everything over this earth, and authority to open the scroll that was in God the Father's hand. Now, we see the removal in Revelation chapter 6, we see the removal of each one of the seals. And it gives a brief little, and then I saw this, John sees a little vision when each one of these seals. So, what's the visions about? Well, let's back up a little bit more. Roll back the clock a little bit before Christ opens the scroll, before he becomes the Son of Man, comes down, is born on the earth. He's up in heaven. There's God the Father with a scroll in his hand, and everybody can see what is written on the outside of the scroll. Everyone in heaven who approaches the throne can see what's written on the outside of the scroll, and Christ, our Lord, knew everything in and out, up and down, back and forward, what was written on that scroll that he could see. And so fast forward from that time, he becomes the son of, is born, Mary's child. He grows up, he gets his disciples, they're all out, and hours before he's captured, they're at the festival in Jerusalem, at the temple, and the disciples are talking about how beautiful the temple is, and Jesus, whoa, let me tell you something. And I'm sure in his mind he was going, oh, I read this on the scroll. Let me tell you about this. What's going to happen? He said, not one of these stones is going to be left laying on the other. All of this is going to be destroyed. All of Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. And they're like, oh crap. But they're scared. They don't want to ask him about it. Finally, they get the courage up later that night. They're sitting around the campfire. Lots of stuff comes out at the campfire. And they're like, hey, Jesus, what are you talking about when the destruction of Jerusalem? Now, this is in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. And actually, Peter comments on just a little bit of it too. But Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. But the question is asked, only the question, in all three, when is this going to happen? When is this destruction of Jerusalem going to happen? Now, only in, I believe it's Matthew, I don't have my Bible open in front of me, they asked one more question, and what will be the sign of the end of this age? Now, what type of age were they in? The Old Testament age. They were in a time of just, the law. Not grace, though, with the law. So, Jesus begins, and it's written in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. These are all the warning signs, okay? All the way up, it says, and then the end shall come. Now, the end of what? Not the world, not the, Armageddon stuff coming. No, this is the end of their age, the end of Jerusalem. Okay? And then the end shall come. So everything he talked about, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, up until it says the sun growing dark and the moon turning to blood, I'll get to that in just a second, it was for Jerusalem. Daniel talked about it. The prophets, all the old prophets talked about it. And they use all this information and they say it's in our future when it's written in the past. And Jack London, I watched him. He had went to seminary. I never went to seminary. He went to seminary and said they were taught about the guy who came in and stood, I can't remember his name, stood in the temple. They were taught all this stuff during the destruction of Jerusalem. That was the son of perdition. That was the seventh king from Daniel chapter 11 that was prophesied to come. He came during the destruction of Jerusalem. He came in and destroyed Jerusalem. Okay? He was the seventh king, Daniel chapter 11. He was the horrible, evil man. He was the, I forget, the what do you call it? When they were split, and then the horn, the little horn. From Daniel, from either chapter 7 or chapter 8, there was two separate people. The one that came from the four horns. This is the guy who destroyed Jerusalem in the temple. The other one is Satan himself, because he was kicked out of heaven 2,000 years ago after Jesus died, rose from the dead, and Jerusalem was destroyed. And there was a war in heaven, and he kicked Satan out, and he's been here with us for 2,000 years. Everybody's looking for an Antichrist? No. But you can go find Satan if you want. He's here somewhere. I don't know where. Okay? He's probably running all this evil crap that's going on in the world today. So, I know I'm getting off track. That's a bad part about this. Is there's so many tracks to take. So let's go back to Jesus with the scroll. Everything up until the sun grows dark and the moon turns to blood was for the destruction of Jerusalem, and it was the first 4 seals on that scroll. You know, the evil guy comes. Yeah, well, that was the seventh king from Daniel chapter 11. He came, he destroyed Jerusalem. There was war, the second seal. There was famine. There was death. Okay? Those 4 seals. What was under those 4 seals written. Okay? Everything else that was written on the outside, Jesus knew about, and he told his disciples. Okay? But when they took them, each one, Jesus removed each one of them seals one by one. John was seeing those visions of that little bit of extra. Okay? The 5th seal, souls under the altar. All those people, all those Jewish people were slaughtered. Okay? They were all slaughtered. Only a remnant survived, and then God scattered them, sent them off scattered. So that was the 5th seal. Now the 6th seal of that scroll has the sun growing dark and the moon turning to blood. Now I want to tell you that's where I found that was the bing for me. I was sat up one night, instead of sitting on the computer, just whatever, I decided to read my Bible and had the flashlight. I felt like camping, I hadn't been camping in a while, and I'm reading my Bible, and so I'd read Matthew, I think it was Mark 13 I was into, and I read the sun growing dark and the moon turned to blood, and I was like, yeah, read this 100 times, and I just kind of slapped the Bible. It flipped over, landed right on Revelation 6:12, which is the sun growing dark and the moon turns to blood. I was like, wait, why is that here too? So then, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, it's in those 3, and it's in Revelation chapter 6. That's where I started. And I started working forward and backward of those seals and started piecing together. And that's what you need to do. If you want to do this on your own, if you want to argue with me, I don't care. I don't even listen to people when they gripe. I'm like, if you're not going to I've always listened to everybody. to try to learn the book of Revelation. And it's just a big mess out there. So you back up in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. It says, after those days, after those times, after the age of the Gentiles is fulfilled, then the sun will go dark and the moon turns to blood. Well, Peter tells us a day to God was 1,000 years to man. Days, plural, with an S, at least 2. I hope it's just 2. It's 2,000 years. So 2,000 years, it says after those days, after the destruction of Jerusalem, after those 2,000 years, the sun will grow dark and the moon turns to blood. Now, in 66 to 70 AD, it started in 66 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed. Think about this. Now, jump forward. When did Jerusalem come back in the picture? In 1967. So if 67 AD was a Jubilee year, and I believe God does things on his, and well, later in the study I'll show you, God does everything on his feast and in his calendar. So on the year of 1967, the Israelis got Jerusalem back in the 6-Day War. So if that's true, that's probably a Jubilee year, the real official Jubilee year. Calendars have been messed up for years. Nobody really knows. I watched a preacher one time on TBN go for 3 or 4 years straight saying this is the Jubilee year, and then I don't know what happened to him after that. It went off the air. I guess everyone got tired of him. But send us money. So so we kind of expected, people were expecting something in 2017, some people. And I was like, yeah, it's possible. But then the more I got thinking about it, God said 2,000 years. 2,000 years. And when is 2,000 years? Well, 2067. So now I personally am not looking forward to Christ's return. He's not going to get here till 2067. And you're going, but the world is going to pot. No. Your job as a Christian is to fight. If it came down with guns and everything, yeah, you'd probably have to fight with that. But right now it's fighting with words. It's fighting with principalities and powers. Because we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. And when Satan can defeat you with the principalities and the powers, you're going to be defenseless when it comes with the flesh and blood. So, 2,000 years. So, what happened when Christ was opening the seals? He was witnessing everything. Everything that was on that was for their future, not ours. It's so ignorant, so disgusting that everyone believes that everything in the Bible, this sounds like it's in the future, is going to happen in our lifetime. That's why that verse saying, ever since my father died, they've been saying all this stuff. It's because it's ignorance. It's quit looking at the entire Bible. Most of the book of Revelation has happened in our past. A lot of it has happened in our past. John saw all that stuff in chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, their letters to the churches. All that happened in our past. Chapter 4, he was taken up to heaven. Chapter 5, he witnessed Christ open the scroll then, 2,000 years ago. Now, what's written in that scroll, on the outside of that scroll, from the sixth seal, is in our future. Okay? You notice there's nothing under the seventh seal, because the seventh seal was open, and who cares, after that. Then you go to chapter 8, and he starts seeing visions in chapter 8. In chapter 7, he sees a vision, too, of the church being resurrected. In chapter 8, he sees God's day of vengeance. The first trumpets and bowls. And that's another thing. The trumpets and bowls are not in that order. It doesn't go 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. The 7 seals were opened 2,000 years ago. The 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls do not go in that order. They go by their number. Trumpet 1, bowl 1. They're a cause and effect relationship. And it is Iran, the first 4 trumpet bowl combinations, the first 4 plague, because there's only 7 plague angels. There's not 14 plague angels. The 7 plague angels, the first 4 trumpet bowl combinations occur in God's day of vengeance, where he allows the Medes to destroy Saudi Arabia. And it's a nuclear strike. And it's going to wipe out 1/3 of the Middle East. It's going to create the lake of fire. It's going to burn and burn and burn. And it's going to be a horrid nightmare for those people there. But it's going to be a beautiful time when Christ establishes his reign over the earth. You read Isaiah and you see all the beautiful things he's going to do. He's going to turn deserts into swampland. He commands tents to be built to receive all the people that are going to come to him. Now, this is people after the resurrection. After we, if you're a Christian, we are taken up. God has so much love and mercy for He owns everything on this planet, including you, me, and the bad guy down the street, the next door neighbor, whoever. Jeffrey Dahmer, He owns them all. And He died so none of them would have to suffer eternal punishment, but they have to make that choice. Yeah, ask someone who loves animals and works with some of these crazy animals. Say the pit bull dogs that have gone, mad. These people, well, my wife had this horrible little white dog too. He was nuts. But they take the time to work because they don't want these animals destroyed. God's no different. He doesn't want to see anyone destroyed. That's why He sent His Son. His Son didn't. Jesus said Himself, I didn't come for the healthy, but for the sick. Do you understand that? There are some sick people out there. Mentally sick, disgustingly sick people out there. And a lot of them have been running our country in the past years. And around the world. Disgusting people. But these are the ones that God came to save. Now, personally, I don't think you cannot rehabilitate these people. But you pop them in hell for a while, if for some reason they were going to get a second chance in hell, oh, slow down, preachers. I hear you. I hear you screaming at me, preachers. Oh, once there, oh, you're always there. Once there, oh, no. I've read it. I've read. Okay, there's a loophole. There's a loophole. But I can tell you one thing. I've been through hell. I have been through a hell that lasted for days and days. Approximately 2 to 3 months. 1 month was horrible. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I would not. I was thinking to myself on one particular day, how am I even alive? I did not know the body could endure such pain and horridness. Just, I could not understand it. But I knew in my heart, this is nothing compared to what Christ did for us at the cross. Christ went to that cross. Christ knew what was coming. He was the Son of God, and He knew what was coming, and He went there for you. You think you've been through hell? Christ paid hell. He went through that hell. A hell you can't even imagine. You and me, if I could have snapped my fingers at any time to get out of that pain, if I could have commanded the legion of angels to come get me out of this crap, bam, it would have happened. Believe me. Believe me. It takes someone. It takes someone with an infinite amount of love in their heart to take all of that hell and not set himself free when you have the power to do so. If you could find someone who actually went through a hell in a Vietnamese camp or something, if they would have had the power to just snap their fingers or something and get out of that, you know they would have came out. You would come out. Some of you know what hell is. And you would have came out. But Jesus stayed there. Stayed there for you and me. And for Jeffrey Dahmer. And for all those horrible, wretched people out there slaughtering children and using them for their own will and pleasures and just the people using this country. Christ died for them too. And that's why we pray. We pray for their souls. I don't care what happens to physically. You can stick them in a meat grinder for all I care. Slowly. Let them repent. Maybe they'll repent then. They dished out the hell, but they can't take it. But God knows their heart. They'll be judged accordingly. But Christ opened that scroll 2,000 years ago. And what you see in through Revelation chapter 6 is everything that was just written on the outside of the scroll. It's like something written down on a newspaper. Some of it today, most of it was in our past. The 6 seals in our future. Chapter 7 is in our future, the resurrection. Chapter 8 is in our future. Chapter 9, chapter 10. Okay? Don't assume that everything in the book of Revelation is in our future when a lot of it was in our past. The destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. That was the big thing. That was God's people. They were His people. And that's what most of the prophecies about was the destruction of Jerusalem. And we do have prophecy regarding the end times, and it's really easy to put together, assemble the events in the book of Revelation. And again, I want to highlight before I go that there are mistranslated words. Off the top of my head, Revelation chapter 7, it talks about the four angels at the Euphrates. They were told not to harm the land, the sea, or any tree. Now, you go to the Old Testament, the land means Jerusalem, sea means the nations, just like I was talking about with the beast out of the sea, the religion out of the nations of the Middle East. The land, the sea, or the trees. A tree is an individual person. That's how you read kind of in between the line there, metaphorically. But the word harm, grossly mistranslated. I had to kind of hop around to study. That was the worst word because I couldn't figure it out. Because I had figured out almost everything in the book of Revelation, and when I hit that verse just didn't fit. All this wonderful stuff is happening, and all of a sudden 4 angels are supposed to harm the land, the sea, and the tree. It doesn't mean to harm. It means to judge. Can you see where that definition kind of slides over? They got away with that. Do not judge the land or the sea or any tree until I have sealed my servants, the 144,000. When Christ returns, He's bringing 144,000 Jews with Him. Whether they are going to be alive at that time or dead, ones that have died, I don't know. Probably a combination of both. It doesn't matter because the resurrection takes place before this. Well, the resurrection will take place. It's about to. At that point, Christ is telling the 4 angels, they are 4 commanding angels. There's a whole other teaching about Revelation chapter 4, about the 4 living beings. It's kind of the same reference. These 4 commanding angels. Not to judge or resurrect, basically. Do not allow, don't do the resurrection yet until I've sealed my servants, the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe. That's one of the mistranslations. When you put that word in there, oh, okay. We're talking about the red dragon again. The red dragon has 7 heads. Well, in the book of Revelation, which unlocked the book of Daniel, it says that those heads are kings. Okay, well, you got 7 kings. Well, who are they? Daniel chapter 11. Daniel chapter 11 gives you all 7 kings. The first 4, Daniel served. The 5th one, which was Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's son, Darius the Mede, Koresh or Cyrus the Persian. The 5th one was Alexander the Great. This is all Middle East book. This is a Middle East book. Middle East prophecy, Middle East everything. That was the known world back then. Alexander the Great was 5th. There was an unknown king who was like a tax collector that it mentions. He just came and went. and which was basically the time of the Roman Empire. And, they taxed the Jews and everything. They had to pay their taxes and blah, blah, blah. So he was probably alive at that time. And then the seventh and final horrible king that was coming to destroy Jerusalem, you see here the apostles talk about it in one of the New Testament. It says, I tell you the truth, we're talking about the Antichrist, that he's here already, the son of perdition, the one that's coming to destroy Jerusalem. And he was there. Now, I believe it's in Revelation chapter 17, it says, one of the heads of the beast got a wound, was wounded. This is, oh man, that's an Antichrist. Yeah, he's going to be wounded, blah, 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 blah. Going to be wounded, and then he's going to be healed, and that's how you know it's going to be him. He's going to get shot in the head. Somebody's going to take an axe to his head or something, but he's going to survive. Okay, this is a bunch of bull crap. Okay, so the original translation of the word one of the heads, actually means the first. That word, I forget what it is in the Greek, means the first. The first head of the beast was wounded. Well, who's the first head of the red dragon? We're talking about the red dragon here, the first beast. Well, that was Nebuchadnezzar. What happened to his head? Head represents authority. Well, his authority, because he, I'm a god, God says, really? Pow. Okay, go. Now you're eating grass, turkey. And he's out there, grazing out there with the buffalo for I don't know how many years, and then God restored him. His authority was restored. See, those little things that King James, whoever was translating the King James Bible, whoever they were, mistranslated those key little words on purpose. Satan's been here for 2,000 years. He was probably King James' right-hand man. Whoever was controlling, this Bible. Oh yeah, we're going to have religion because I'm going to use it to control everybody. But we're going to tweak it. He tweaks it. Okay. Another thing. In Revelation chapter 20, we got the millennial reign, and then after millennial reign, they come together at the Battle of Armageddon, and it says the sands on the seashore, are coming. They were numbered as sand on the seashore. I live near a beach. I've been on the beach I don't know how many times. I picked up a scoop of dirt in my hand. I don't even want to think about counting. There's probably 1 million plus just in that handful of little grains of dirt. I don't know. But you look at a beach, that's uncountable. Can you count 7 years worth of people? Well, doggone Google can do it. Google can count the past, I don't know, everything that's been recorded. It can add up that. So how can 7 years of people, 7 years worth of surviving people from an Antichrist, become uncountable at a battle later on? That's where we go back to Revelation chapter 7, and we find out that's again the 7 year tribulation. These are the ones that come out of the Great Tribulation. It's from the time of sin entered the garden, from Adam till now. Past, present, future people. Past, present, future evil people that will not follow God. That's three. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. This is in my book anyway. The second book. There are three verses. That confounded me about. I took all the rapture verses, resurrection verses, and these three confounded me. I was so confused. I was like, what is this thing talking about? It took me quite a while. And then it hit me. Jesus said it. One of the disciples said it, and in Daniel 12:2, I think it was. It says there will be a resurrection of both. At one of the resurrections, this is Jesus talking on this time when he said one of the resurrections will be a resurrection of both the living and the dead. Another one was the righteous and the unrighteous. And then the other one said about the same thing. Those 3 verses, I was like, there's going to be a resurrection of righteous people? Yeah. Unrighteous people? What are you talking about? Well, the 4 resurrections are this. I'll lay it out for you. Christ was the first resurrected. He had to be. He's the first fruits, right? We agree? Pastors, preachers everywhere? Great. The second resurrected were those right after Christ. Matthew 27, verse 50 through 53. They were resurrected up out of the grave, and they went into the holy city. Okay? Now, Christ was not evil. Those people were not, those that were resurrected were not evil. They were holy ones. So that's 2 of positive, good resurrections with holy people. Christ himself, he's obviously holy, and the holies, a lot of the holy people. Okay. We'll skip the 3rd for now. The 4th resurrection is the one that comes after the millennial reign, way at the end. And I prove it in a book. It's a resurrection of life to life. There's no resurrection of death there. Only the live ones are resurrected and given their immortal bodies. The 3rd resurrection, we are not given immortal bodies. You are resurrected back pretty much the way you are now, but healthy, and you'll remain healthy. Adam remained healthy. I'm guessing, my best guess, 27,000 years worth of people before sin entered the garden was holy. They were healthy. They were holy and healthy because there was no sin. There was no death. Death wasn't even a vocabulary word. I like saying that. But now we can't get enough with it. Our kids learn about it. Video games teach them all about death. Have we taught them about our resurrection? Now the 3rd resurrection, the one that's next, that's coming up, it's probably going to be another. It's not happening tomorrow, people. Unless, it's about 40-something years from now, I believe. Everybody has their own opinion. But we're resurrected, and there's a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous. Why is this? Why the unrighteous? Why would God resurrect anybody up out of hell? And I know the preachers are screaming right now, oh, hey, no, man, once you're there, you're there. No. Closely, when you understand the book of Revelation and those verses, y'all take them verses and you put them where you want them. And you misrepresent those verses when they don't say that. Nothing says, for the people that are stuck there forever until it's talking about the very end. The very, very end, which is over 1,000 years from now. Okay? So, you got the 3rd resurrection, all these people. We, Revelation chapter 20, we are raised up to serve God. And basically it's from the holy city. That's another thing. The holy city's coming before. It doesn't come at the end. It's coming with Christ. It's coming with heaven. Revelation chapter 1. If you don't have a Bible that says distinguishes between which Lord is talking to who, which Lord, my Lord said to my Lord. If you don't say Adonai said to Yeshua, who said to the Holy Spirit, that type of deal, you got to find a Bible that distinguishes between which Lord is which, because it's an original. They know who it is in the original Hebrew and Greek. But Adonai in God the Father, in Revelation chapter 1 says He's coming too. Now the Holy Spirit's here. Christ is coming. God the Father's coming. We found out at the resurrection everybody in heaven's coming. God's surrounded by His angels. They're coming. All of heaven's coming. God's putting an end to this. He's putting an end to sin, death, hell, and the grave. Do you understand that? And when He comes, He's going to resurrect everybody out of hell. The same time He takes us up, same time that resurrection, all those bodies come out of the grave, all of them's coming out of the grave. And it's going to be real sad. Of course, they're going to be stunned because they just came from hell, and they're going to be shocked. And like, oh my gosh, I'm not in hell anymore. And they're going to see angels coming down. Now, we do a thorough study of Zechariah and some of the other stuff. This is how I see it. The angels are going to come down. Those who had died were raised to life. All of them. But the angels are going to come down, and they're going to take up the holy ones. These are 4 different types of angels, too. That's in Revelation chapter 4. Yes, one's a lion. These are the 4 living beings with eyes all around. They're a plural representative of the 4 different groups of angels. I'll just tell you that, Revelation chapter 4. You got the ones that are closest to the throne, which is the lions. They surround the ring around the throne. The next ring is the ox angels. The 3rd ring is the human-looking angels. And the 4th ring is the eagle angels. And that's why you see a lone eagle in Revelation chapter 8. Now, I won't get into that. But these angels come down, and they take the people. And then us that are alive and remain, say, well, it may not be me, it may be my great-grandkids or something. And they're like, oh my gosh, angels. And then after they're taken up, then more angels come, and they take up the remainder. And who's left on the earth? Christ, his 144,000, and all the unrighteous, because God loves them. He knows that we're talking about eternity. Eternity. We're talking about eternity. No second chance. And God knows this, because his word says it. And Christ is giving these people one last chance, and it's going to be hard as crap for them. You think going a 9-to-5 job, sweating and toiling and all that's bad? Be in the millennial reign. And the Old Testament talks about it. They're going to be like slaves. They're going to clean up Jerusalem. They're going to rebuild. They're going to do all this stuff. They're going to do God's will with an iron. God's going to rule with an iron rod. But it's nothing compared to where they came from. But then the millennial reign only lasts 1,000 years. And then Satan's going to be released. And he's going to lie to them. After everything they've learned and everything they see and everything they've heard, Satan's going to lie to them. He's going to say, hey, come follow me. Do my will, and I'll let you do anything you want. You can go back to doing what you were doing before you died the first time. And they're going to be like, oh yeah. And they're going to be like the sands on the seashore. They're going to be, well, it's not, again, a mistranslation, not the 200 million man army. Million man is not even in there. 200 in the original Greek means, what was that word? Can't remember the word. It means uncountable. Same thing as the sand on the seashore. You can't count them. They're going to come against Christ. And then God's going to send the fire to destroy what's called the world, that area, that land, that region, with the uncountable number of people coming to the battle at Armageddon. He's going to send the fire, and that fire is going to be all the Christians, all those who serve the living God. I ain't going to say all the Christians. There's people who call themselves Christians out there. There's pastors that call themselves Christians out there, and they're not on God's agenda. They're molesting kids. They're doing all kinds of horrible stuff. We're not naive here. It's and some of them are even political pawns to degun the church, take away their guns. They're agents of evil. So that's for you to judge about your own pastor. But this is just a brief thing. I didn't go into too much detail. But there's no coming 7-year tribulation. It's all a bunch of baloney. I don't know. It's to, when you see trouble, it's for Christians to lie down and go, oh, it's God's will. I'm supposed to die. I'm supposed to get slaughtered by these evil people. And that's probably what's happened in the Middle East. You know, a lot of them are like, oh, I've had people say that to me. Yeah, I'm suffer. You know, suffer, you know, ugh. You know, this is the way it's supposed to be. God said it. Well, no, God didn't say it. Some dumb preacher said it. It's a lie. And if you don't get off your butts, people, and study for yourselves. I know it's hard. I spent 7 years. But in that 7 years, well, I did one book, and then a couple years later, I did the other book, and you could start with the second one if you like the rant. It's more of a rant, but it gets to the facts. You can look up the verses yourself. Go back to the first book. And I'm not perfect. No, there's a few mistakes in that first book. Don't cry about it. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm still learning. I'm finding new things. You know. So, study for yourself. Get off your butts. Study for yourself. And when you find out what's really going to happen, you're going to be like you're going to look at what's going on today and say, there's some kind of players back up in there playing us. And you need to open your eyes and figure out what's going on in the world today. It's not the end times. Well, the end time, I'm sorry. The end times and the last days is the same thing. It's 2,000. It's those 2,000 years. Days is plural. A time is 1,000 years. 2 times is 2,000 years. Okay, we are in the last days. Last times, you know, the apostles was in the last days, the end times. You know, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. Okay, do you understand that? That's all in the book. There's so much details. Just, you need to study on your own. And quit letting these people that call themselves ministers and preachers push you around. It's time to wake up, America. It's time to wake up, world. And I hope that this has been helpful. Again, I have 2 free ebooks. They're both on smashwords.com. Smashwords.com. The Book of Revelation is so simple is one of them. And Revelations of Grace and Mercy. The truest interpretation of the Book of Revelation. I hope you've enjoyed this. You have a nice day. And I'm sorry it's just an audio, but it's too long to be a video. I've got other videos out there on my channel on YouTube. This one will probably go on YouTube and some other channels. Just check out my links. And I hope you've had a great day. And I hope you study for yourselves. Thank you, and have a great one. The Book of Revelation is so simple is a free ebook available at smashwords.com.